千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now. To be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process of the Tao. Tao Te Ching, chapter 60. First, we had discussed the title of the Chinese title for this particular chapter, translated as Great Kingdom, composed of two characters. The first character to the left, meaning big, large, great, so translated here as great. And the second character there, meaning state, nation, country, here translated as kingdom. So the translation of the chapter title is Great Kingdom, but you can see that it can also be translated as large country, and that would be quite valid. Indeed, when we get into chapter 61, there is quite a bit of that translation being used, translating as large country instead of great kingdom. And the reason for that is because chapter 61 will be a continuation of this chapter, and it's going to talk about the connection between a larger kingdom and a smaller kingdom, and therefore large country and small country was the chosen way to convey that. So we'll get to that after we're finished with chapter 60. Previously, we took a look at the chapter overall. We saw that it was a relatively short chapter. We divided it up, and this has a classical structure in the Tao Te Ching where we have a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning part is just a couple of introductory lines. That's our section 1. And then we have 5 lines in the middle. That's the main body of this particular chapter. And then the last 2 lines are the concluding lines. And where we were at last time is that we got to line 7. We finished talking about section 1, which was the metaphor of cooking a small fish as applied to ruling a large country. And then if you go one level beyond that, as you recall, ruling a large country means managing your life so that your life is like a large country or a great kingdom. And how do we do that? Well, section 1 says we have to use the Tao to manage the world. At the personal level, that's using the Tao to manage your personal world. Then section 2 was the focus last time. And you can see from the translation, it's about demons and gods and people and also sages. So this is highly metaphoric. And as we talked about previously, all of these represent different forces in life, positive and negative. And those different forces can be external or internal. So what we did last time was that we reduced everything to just a few graphics. And because, picture is better than 1,000 words at conveying information sometimes, so we used the graphic like this. This particular slide represented demons. So demons were using this mythological figure, these folk tales, these malicious, malevolent beings as representing the negative forces in life, which could be external to you, that's your interaction with the world, or internal to you in your mind. So externally, there can be quite a bit of negativity in one's life. There can be negative people. There can be people who mock, criticize, sabotage, or find faults. And those are just a small sample of the kind of negativity you can face in the outside world. Now, what about the world within? The world on the inside, your thoughts? Well, there, we all know from personal experience that we can harbor quite a bit of negativity as well. And as you can see here, I've listed some examples. That's certainly not the extent of it, but we're all beset with these negativities every now and then. So what the Lao Tzu wanted to convey was that in battling against these negative forces, it is all about using the Tao to manage them. And what we had talked about last time was that you start out with the Tao within. You tame your inner demons, you bring them under control so that all the negative forces that you had inside have the possibility of transforming themselves into positive energies within. That translation has to occur first. And when that is done to a certain level, you begin to be able to use the Tao as protection. Here in this graph, symbolized by a shield to the left, a guarding mechanism, a defense against the outside world. So when you have the Tao within, you are protected without, you're protected externally, and you are no longer at the mercy of the negative forces in your life. So that's how the metaphoric language of demons plays out in a real life scenario. And we, of course, we always want to apply the Tao to real life, to the level of you. So what's next? Well, in addition to the negative forces in life, there's also deities and sages. We normally would think of them as positive, as contributing good things to life. Now, Lao Tzu would be quite unique in saying that, well, that's not always the case because sometimes you can be facing well-intended help, assistance from other people that turn out to be interference. So this graph will showcase that. Whether you need help or not, as you are interacting with the external world, some busybodies may reach out to say, "Hey, I'm going to help you." Now, you may or may not be looking for that, and if not, you're going to have to say, "Thanks, but no thanks. I appreciate it, but I don't really need it." There are well-meaning people, certainly, who will come in, kind of barge in and say, look, you're doing it all wrong. Let me show you. Let me show you how to do it right. So that's another kind of interference where the intention is good. Hey, let me show you how to do it right. So this is the better way. But you didn't actually ask for that. And you had something different in mind. So you may not actually need it. It may not actually be helpful. So those are how the positive energies of the world can sometimes go wrong. Then we also need to look at the internal aspects as well. And then we see that we too have those moments where we look at other people. They need my help. Only I can fix it for them. I'll show them. So these desires to interfere with other people's business can oftentimes be based on ego, an egocentric mind thinking, I am the one that will save them. Later on, though, as you go further in the Tao, you realize that, wait a minute, that's not always the case. Sometimes it can be true, but not always. And my ego can distort my perception so that I cannot tell one from the other. And I may even be trying to change things that are outside of my control. And that brings about problems and troubles for everybody. So what happens when you cultivate the Tao? That's the next graphic. We learn about non-interference, non-meddling. It doesn't mean that we do absolutely nothing. It really depends on the situation. There's going to be times when reaching out, even a very light touch, can be extremely helpful. Most of the time, the Tao sages would say it would be best to observe until you are certain about the situation. When you are observing correctly, you will also find out where you can apply a little bit of work. Some nudge, just a reminder to get the most effect. So you begin to think and understand that it's not about me. I am not the savior of everybody's problems. It is not my job to fix everybody else. I sometimes need to step back to let other people learn the lessons that they were meant to learn so that they can benefit from that. If I were to interfere, I deprive them of that benefit. So now you transform your mind from the ego-driven need to be important, to help other people, to be needed, to being at peace. And then externally, that'll change into protection against possible interference, possible unnecessary offers of help from other people, where you can skillfully sidestep the offer while still being very gracious and appreciative, very grateful to them for being kind, being helpful. But I got it. Listen, I really do have it under control. I know what I'm doing. I understand what you're trying to do, and I thank you so much, but I got it from here. So those are the analysis that we did as a quick recap and summary for our discussion last time. Now, one thing to point out for both the demons and also the deities and sages, whether it's positive or negative, one thing is clear. We can change ourselves. We cannot change other people. So we can transform our thoughts within in our own minds. It's much more difficult to do that for other people. We know we certainly cannot reach into their minds to change the thoughts. The best we can do is to show by example the better way, the proper way, the way of the Tao, in the hopes that they will want to emulate and learn, and therefore becoming skillful in the Tao themselves. We cannot change others. We appreciate them, and hopefully we can walk the path with them, just as we are all walking the path together right now. To summarize the summary, I have this slide here that I didn't get around to showing last time. So from this point on, we're going to be looking at new slides. So govern the kingdom, 治国. This is what Lao Tzu was trying to say when he was speaking about the need to manage your life with the Tao. And everything that we talk about here, about society, about the kingdom, the country, it all applies to our personal lives. So there are two sides here, the yin and yang. There's attain the Tao, and then there's lose the Tao. So the Tao is ever present. We can't really lose it, but we can definitely lose sight of it by obscuring the Tao through our own blindness. Attain the Tao, well, it's always around, but we need to become one with the Tao. So what does that mean to attain the Tao? Well, the demons have no power. And now that you have seen the slide talking about the demons as representing the negative forces, you know what this is talking about. You know what this really means. It's talking about negative energies in your life losing their power over you. Then lose the Tao would be quite the opposite. the demons terrorize people, or in one's personal life, this would mean that your inner demons, your own inner demons, terrorize you in the sense that you are still suffering from the consequences of these inner demons being present. You cannot quite rid yourself of them, and you won't be able to do so unless you apply the Tao. Then, back to attain the Tao, the demons try but are unable to harm anyone. This is really making the point that, especially in the external world, we're never going to be completely eliminating the negative factors, the negative people, negative attitudes. They will always exist. Nothing we can do about that, but we can definitely protect ourselves so they do not become a harmful influence in our lives. If you were to lose the Tao, though, the demons cause much damage and chaos everywhere. This means the external critiques, the naysayers, the condemnation, the conflicts, the friction, and the internal fears and doubts, uncertainties, they cause anxiety for you. They cause suffering. Indeed, much of the suffering that we go through in life comes from exactly this, the quote unquote demons, internally and externally. And let's go to the next one, switch from the negative to the positive. When you attain the Tao, sages and gods refrain from interference that can inadvertently harm people. They still have what they ought to do. For the gods, it is to symbolize goodness for people. For the sages, it is to teach. But both will not be harming people inadvertently through good intentions. If you lose the Tao, though, sages and gods help people with good intentions, but end up meddling in their affairs instead. In mythology, when we look at Greek mythology, etc., mythologies all around the world, we see many tales of the gods interfering in mortal affairs. So it's a common concept among mankind, regardless of cultural background, that there can be that kind of interference that does not originate from demonic forces, but instead from divine sources. Next, on the attain the Tao side, the results of attaining the Tao is that the people enjoy the peace and prosperity brought about by the Tao. For a kingdom, it means the kingdom is harmonious and prosperous. The people are happy. The ruler has an easy time governing the kingdom that is running so well. For you and I, on a personal level, it just means that everything in life goes well, that everything seems to be coming together. All the pieces of the puzzle kind of fall together, come together on their own, making your life very easy indeed. The opposite of that, I think we've all experienced ourselves in the context of the kingdom. The people suffer. There seems to be no hope at all. In personal life, we know that when we're beset with demons internally and externally, it's definitely time for suffering, and it definitely can seem hopeless. Fortunately, we're now following the path of the Tao, so there's hope after all. There's light at the end of the tunnel. We can follow that light for liberation. So then let's go back to the lines of the Tao Te Ching and work our way through the remaining lines. There's actually not that many. We only have 2 more lines left. So line 8 says, they both do no harm to one another. So both, the translation both in this case, goes to the second character in line 8, 两, which means two. So both sides do no harm to one another. Now, interpretation of the two sides can vary from one commentary to the next, even among Chinese scholars. So I want to make sure that you're exposed to the range of interpretations. What are the both referring to? Both in this context has two possible interpretations. Some say that this is referring to demons and gods, that positives and negatives do not harm humans. Each group coexists with the others in peace. But then the problem is, if you plug in demons and gods, it would be that demons and gods do not harm each other, one another. The one another part here is referring to the second to last character in line 8. That's a literal translation of that. The last character there means harm, and then the character in the middle means no. So if you go from the third character to the end, no one another harm. So translated as no harm to one another. Well, the chapter was never about the demons and gods harming one another, so that interpretation is less than optimal. What might be a better interpretation? Well, the both sides can be referring to the ruler and the people. They do not harm one another because each side has its place and each side has much to offer the kingdom. So why is this a better interpretation than the first one? Because it matches the beginning of this chapter. So remember what I said before, if you read the Tao Te Ching correctly and understand it correctly, you always see that at the end of the chapter, you go back to the beginning, that it forms a full circle. In the beginning of this chapter, it is talking about how the ruler must rule the people with the Tao. So here at the very end, it must be referring to the same thing. So we'll go with that. Continuing with that interpretation. And this is, by the way, that's a very good method to use to assess the quality of translation or interpretation. If you see that they have gone with the gods and demons explanation, then you know that they are lacking in insights into the Tao Te Ching. So now let's talk about this. Let's talk about this line. Beyond the interpretation, let's talk about the meaning. It echoes the first lines about rulers and subjects, and what it says is that let's talk about the harm. Let's talk about the harm that the rulers and the people can do to one another. Potentially, there's always the possibility that the ruler can harm people through tyranny, excessive control, overzealous control, oppression, cracking down on the people. We've all seen countless examples of that throughout history, so that part is easy to understand. So what about the other side? How about the people harming the ruler? Well, it is also possible for people to harm the ruler through uprising. Again, we have seen countless examples of that throughout history. No big surprise. So here, this line is essentially saying that both sides, both the ruler and the people, can coexist, can collaborate for the good of the kingdom rather than to harm one another. And this is possible if the Tao is present in the kingdom. When the Tao is present, there is peace on both sides. So each side has its place without intruding upon the other. So this is actually an important idea. So when we go into commentary on the Tao Te Ching, this idea, this concept, the very last bullet is always mentioned, that if each side can hold to its place and do what it ought to do, like do your job, right? The ruler has a certain job, certain obligations to the people, certain obligations to the kingdom. The people themselves have an obligation to the ruler as well, and of course, obligation to the kingdom that the ruler represents. If everybody can be doing what they're supposed to be doing, there's going to be peace and harmony that prevails. That's the central idea. Let's take a closer look. So the ruler and the people, and you can see this matrix here. I think it's easy to understand. Each side has its place. Each side has its role. So that's what this chapter is really talking about. That's what the concluding section is talking about. So the ruler, what is the place for the ruler? Well, we know that especially the absolute rulers of antiquity, they are sitting on top of the hierarchy. They are monarchs. And they are supported by ministers and officials who administer the policies and laws of the land. So they are on top. And what about the people? Well, the people are spread throughout the foundation of the kingdom, of course. So intuitively, that is appealing. They enjoy and expect protection and stability provided from above. If the ruler is not able to protect and provide stability in society for the people will become rather unhappy. So what about the roles that the two sides play? For the ruler, it is to lead, to rule, of course, to serve as the most visible symbol of the country, to inspire the people, that's what it means to lead, to rally them to the common cause for the greater good of the kingdom. And then what about the role that the people must play? Well, they have to be productive. They have to do their part. They have to contribute to society, each in their own way, different vocations, different jobs, different tasks in different aspects of the economy. They are expected to be loyal to the kingdom, in exchange for protection, security, stability. They are expected to support its goals and aspirations, to build greater. So then what this slide is talking about is when each side is at peace in its place. And when each side plays its role in accordance with the Tao, harmony prevails. The Tao manifests in the kingdom, which just means the kingdom becomes prosperous and powerful. Now, this idea that each side has its place and its role to play, it applies in the other lines of this chapter as well, the lines that apply that talk about the demons, the deities, the sages, and the people. So we can look at it that way. We can look at it not from the hierarchy of the kingdom level, but we can look at it from the realms, the different realms where different entities reside. Here, as you can see, we've got deities, sages, people, demons down the left-hand axis. Each group has its place. Each group has its role. So for deities live in the realm of the divine, what we might call heaven. So definitely in ancient Chinese mythology, that's a place in the clouds, similar to the mythologies of other cultures. What about the sages? They do not live in heaven. They can be living in heaven on earth if they run their lives properly. But mostly they live among people as part of the community. So this is where I once again want to make note that the stereotype of sages living away from civilization is just that, a stereotype. Actual sages are for the people, of the people, among the people. And the people themselves, well, of course, they live in the material world, the world in which we all live. This is the mortal realm. And the demons, demons live in the nether world, the realm of darkness. And if you want to call it hell or Hades, some other names for the underworld, that's okay too. These are all different labels for the same kind of concept. So each group has its place. So the idea is that they should stay in their place without intruding upon other places where they don't belong. And then each group has its role. For the deities, they have to serve as avatars for virtues of human aspiration. They stand for something, perhaps courage, perhaps compassion, different virtues that human beings can aspire to. What about sages? What's their job? Well, we know what the sages are supposed to do is to guide, assist, and nurture people, teach the Tao. And what about people? What about you and me? What are we supposed to do? Well, not just live, but thrive. Use the Tao to manage your life so that everything becomes easy, everything is good, everything is fun. To learn and advance spiritually. That's what we are all doing right now. And then the demons, well, they serve a function too. They're meant to provide warnings, to serve as counterexamples. And if you look at what the deities do, this is the opposite of that. So again, when each group is at peace in its place, does not infringe upon the other groups, and plays its role in accordance with the Tao, harmony prevails in existence, in reality. The Tao manifests in the world, not just the kingdom, but the world. The world becomes a better place for all, civilization flourishes, and there is a way for people to become enlightened. They are not suffering from warfare and chaos all the time. So then we always apply these ancient ideas to the modern world because these are metaphoric. These are meant to talk about some things in life. So we want to transport these ancient examples, ancient metaphors to the modern era, to our lives, to your life and my life. So I have a slide here that talks about that specifically, the modern application. Because what we want to do is to apply Lao Tzu's metaphors. We know that in life, we all have different roles in various settings. So it's not as simplistic as the ruler playing one role, the peasants, the subjects of the kingdom playing another role. We find that sometimes we have to lead, sometimes we have to follow different roles. So interactions with different people in our lives can happen at the workplace, at home, among friends, etc. So at the workplace, we have job duties, and everybody has different duties. We're all part of a team. We're meant to collaborate, come together as a team to achieve the aims of the organization. And what about at home? Well, at home, we've got different roles. We have duties in the family. We have roles in the family, and very common that you can have more than one role. In a multi-generational home, you can possibly be child to the oldest generation, but parent to the youngest generation, as an example. And to other members of the family, your connection with them can vary. There's a spouse, there's kids, of course, And then there's, of course, extended family and relatives. So you can tell already that these categories map to our changing roles in life. And it's because we understand the metaphors provided by Lao Tzu that we can apply them. Whether it's the workplace or home, and whether it's your job or parenting, spousal relationship, family duties, and one more. How about social situations? What is similar? With friends, we have social obligations. We don't think of them as job duties or duties in the family duties, but we do have social obligations. Hey, my buddy helped me move. Now he's going to move. I have to help him. Or we're all supposed to get together, the group of us, every week at a certain place. I have an obligation to all of my friends to show up. Various obligations. And in each role, if you apply the idea that we've been looking at, then you see exactly where Lao Tzu was going with that. The key, what if we want to have a harmonious life? What if we want to prosper in life? Well, then, first of all, know where you are. In the overall scheme of things, this is another way to say that there is a place for you. There is a place where you belong. Do you feel the belonging? Are you at peace in that place? If it is not the right place for you, are you moving to the better place, a place that is more suitable? So the place where one is one important key in the equation. What about the second part of the equation? Well, it's about knowing how to play your role. What is required? What are my duties with my family? What are the job duties that I have at work? Do I know what they are? Am I executing my duties to everyone's satisfaction? If so, then I am making a contribution to the family, to my social circle, or my workplace, the company that hired me. So then peace and harmony can prevail if you are able to occupy your place in peace and play your role properly. And not just you, but everyone around you. When everybody is able to do this, harmony prevails overall. Now, let me also say this. We've talked about this concept in ancient times and now in modern times. In ancient times, of course, we're talking ancient China, and therefore we have the mythology elements like demons and deities, the places they occupy, like the realm of the divine, the realm of darkness, etc. That's ancient China. Here we're talking about the modern world. I also want to make sure to mention that these ideas are not just ancient Chinese or Asian. This is actually common to humanity. So there's actually a Western expression for this as well. A Western expression that I want to share with you. There's something similar. It's a little bit simpler, but it's expressing the same concept. So Western expression here. In the 19th century, well-known poet Robert Browning of England composed the following. We're talking 19th century, quite some time ago. He wrote, "God's in his heaven, all's right with the world." This expression became very popular, and it's been used in the centuries since. So from the time of its formulation to now, occasionally you will still see people utilize this phrase. What does it mean? Well, it became popular because it means everything seems to be in perfect order. When everything is moving along just right, Everything is in its place. You can say, wow, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. Everything's in place. Everything is doing what it should. Now you see that this expression is very similar to what Lao Tzu was trying to say. It's a feeling of comfort and reassurance from all things, all people being properly situated and aligned. They are at the place where they should be. They're doing the things they ought to be doing, and this applies to the self as well. I am exactly where I should be at this moment in time. I am doing exactly what I ought to be doing at this moment in time. And if you think about it right now, if you apply this concept to the here and now, all of us, this moment, we are exactly where we should be. We are doing exactly what we ought to be doing. So that is the reason why at this moment in time, the Tao is manifesting for us. There's harmony for all of us in this meeting. This is how we can flourish. We just need to apply this whole thing, this idea, to life itself and to our little corner of the world. So let's continue. So in your life, let's talk about that. This is going to correspond with relationships, the way you interact with people, how you interact with others. The Tao being present in your life, then peace prevails in your life. You and everyone else share in a positive way. There's positive energy among you. So the line that says both sides do no harm, we can extend that to say, well, no one is harmed, meaning everybody benefits. It's a win-win situation for all. And it all starts with you. When you improve yourself with the Tao. And as of this slide, we have completely explained line 8. I think we have made it as clear as humanly possible. And I believe everybody has seen the examples, ancient and modern, East and West, that fully illustrates the concept. So the last line says, so virtue emerges and returns. So on the face of it, that's not so easy to understand, but there is a very specific meaning associated with this. Let's get into that. Here is the last line. Now, when we talk about virtue merging and returning, the merging part is a synergistic fusion. It's talking about the virtue of different parties coming together, combining to become more powerful. And this is talking about the positive energies of virtues. So then, what does that mean for the kingdom? In the original formulation of this chapter, speaking of the ruler and the subjects in the kingdom, it means the rulers and the people work together for the common cause of the kingdom. Thus, their virtues combine and merge harmoniously. What about return? What does that mean? The term return is talking about returning to oneness of the Tao. It means people and the ruler within the kingdom are unified toward greatness. So this chapter, after all, is the great kingdom. So when people and the ruler are working together toward that, they are unified. They have solidarity. Let's continue exploring a little bit. We can't just talk about the kingdom, the ancient times. We have to apply that to the personal level, as we always do. So for you, it's a synergistic fusion of positive energy, so that part is not so different. Now, what it means is that, as I said a moment ago, it all begins with you. So you have to be the catalyst. You have to be the person who initiates the chain reaction, starting with practicing and accumulating your virtues, whatever that is that you want to practice for yourself. Now, your virtues combined with the goodness of the people around you can become something great. So what you are working on, it is something that others will observe. They know that you are improving yourself, and they will also be coming to you with their own virtues, with their own goodness, so that by coming together, the synergistic fusion can be greater than the sum of its parts. And return here, same as before, in the kingdom interpretation of the metaphor, it is also returning to the oneness of the Tao. That part's no different. And it just means that everyone, yourself included, everybody around you, everyone gets one step closer to enlightenment. Enlightenment in the Tao is synonymous with oneness with the Tao. So that's the last line. It's depicting the results of what happens when you practice the Tao successfully, that you are able to master the concept that we talked about today, which is being in your place, doing, practicing, playing your role. When everybody can do that, you affecting other people, influencing other people, there's a great deal of goodness that will be affecting everybody. That's the Tao. So now that we're at the very last line and we've, in my opinion, completely explained this line, we're ready to do the paraphrase for chapter 60. So the reason for doing the paraphrase is to demonstrate understanding. We want to express the meaning using modern language. So we're going to start with the first section. This is, of course, the famous cooking and small fish. And how can we paraphrase that in modern language? Cooking a fish evenly on both sides is a metaphor for a king to rule the kingdom. And that, in turn, speaks to building a great life. The best way to go about it is to make use of Tao principles, such as moderation and non-interference. Then we get to the second section. We spent quite a bit of time on this in our previous meeting. The demons, the gods or deities, the people, the sages. How can we paraphrase that? Ideally, we would want to say it in modern language, but also incorporate what it implies about living the Tao life. A king who follows this path can protect his kingdom against the demons of chaos and crimes in society. When the people feel safe from such negative forces, they can prosper in peace. The king can also guard against the unintended consequences of well-meaning interference, which can also cause harm, despite appearing positive at first. In the same way, those who follow this Tao can protect themselves against the inner demons of self-sabotage. as well as the harmful effects of meddling in other people's business. Just like the kingdom becoming more powerful under a wise ruler, a life well lived in the Tao is one that will bring prosperity and harmonious relationships with the people around you. So very important for us to always come back to the here and now and to you and me. So the last part is the conclusion. This is what we talked about, the differing interpretation, doing harm to one another, and it cannot be about gods and demons and sages and people. That's definitely a lot more sides than two sides. But if we refer back to the very beginning, cooking a small fish, ruling the kingdom, that's the ruler and the people, it makes sense. So here's the paraphrase. When the virtue of the ruler come together with those of the people, the result is a synergistic fusion. The same is true in your life. When the goodness you offer to others meets with the positive energy they give back in return, this merging of virtues brings everyone closer to the Tao and the goal of returning to oneness. That's what this chapter means. All that fish flipping, all the deities and demons and whatnot, at the end of the day, it's about the merging of virtues, your virtues, those of your friends and your family, to be closer to the Tao. So that's the paraphrase for chapter 60. The only thing left is the full circle discussion, which is one single slide to connect the end of this chapter to the beginning. How do we make that connection to really get the full circle, the essence of the Tao? So here I have the last line. It's about the virtues merging and then returning. And then the beginning of the chapter, which is about ruling a large country like cooking a small fish. So in the last line, we'll start with the last line. Lao Tzu talks about the merging of virtues and the returning back to the Tao. Now let's go ahead and connect that back to the beginning. We link this back to the beginning, which is about ruling a great kingdom, which we know it means building a great life. So full circle back to the end. Now the connection is clear. When we talk about the merging of virtues, it's yourself and other people, your virtues and the virtues of others. What that means is that you're not in this alone. You're not on your own. You're not by yourself. It's you plus the positive energies of others. So building a great life, not something you can do all by yourself. It's gotta be something that is done in collaboration, not done in isolation, not done in a vacuum. Let's put that into a bullet. In order to create and live your ideal life, you need your own virtuous practice, plus the virtues of others. Both are necessary. Both have to come together. They do no harm. Everybody benefits. You benefit. The people around you benefit. Win-win situation. So ultimately, this is what it means to use the Tao to manage the world. And that is our full circle discussion, concluding chapter 60. So the summaries that we have shown before, let's look at them again. For 60, there are two parts. Part 1 is about cooking a small fish, comparing that to life. The chapter compares it to ruling a large kingdom, but let's jump ahead to the head of the class and straight away compare that to living life. It means you have to be moderate. You have to find the balance. not too much, not too little, not too fast, not too slow. You have to be decisive. You have to think about the decision that you're going to make, but you don't want to flip it around too many times or the fish breaks apart. You have to decline debates, important in the Tao, because nothing flips the fish like the back and forth in arguments. And then finally, no more flipping the fish. Take action. You can't overthink the decision to take action. You have to think about it. You have to look before you leap, but you must eventually make the decision to take action. So that's part one. Summary for 60. Part two is what we went through, especially the parts about the positive energies, negative energies. The demons can be external or internal. The external demons are the naysayers, the critics, the doubters, the people who have no faith in you, the people who are actively trying to sabotage you. Internal demons, well, that's the realm of the self-sabotage, the self-destructive tendencies. Everybody has struggled with that at some point, hopefully not anymore. The deities or the gods, well, external, internal, there's the well-meaning assistance, and then there's also your well-meaning assistance to other people. Both must be tempered with the Tao. That's the message from chapter 60. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.